No one election gives anybody the right to run roughshod over the Constitution. We did not unelect the Constitution. We did not unelect our faith. We did not unelect God. First of all, I want to just, because I looked into some of the eyes of the young people and it startled me coming in here just a minute ago. So my pastoral piece kind of kicked in. And I do want you to know that, for instance, in North Carolina, where we've been working hard to build fusion coalitions, where we've been organizing out west, where they expected Trump to get 85% of the vote. We have 7 new branches of the NAACP that are mostly all white. And when we've been working down in the eastern part of North Carolina, you need to know that North Carolina was the only southern state other than Virginia to hold off the Trump tide. We won the governorship, we won the attorney general, and we put a majority on the Supreme Court by voting an African American on the Supreme Court. And Hillary Clinton got 2 million more votes overall in this country. So it's important that we evaluate this moment properly. Feeling rejected, mourning, hurting is natural. It's something that you do when something dies. And America rejected, or some parts of America rejected some of its most fundamental foundations, justice, equal protection under the law, common sense, our deepest religious values. However, what I stood for on Monday, before the election, I'm going to stand for on Wednesday and beyond after that. So if you were for justice on Monday, you ought to be for justice after Tuesday. If you were for children on Monday, you ought to be for children after Tuesday. If you were for health care and living wages and voting rights and immigrant rights, the LGBTQ community, if you were for Latinos, for Black Lives Matter on Monday, no matter what happened on Tuesday, you should still be for those things Wednesday and beyond, because we are always going to be a nation in pursuit of more perfection. When they were beat on the Edmonds-Pettus Bridge, they did not go back to the church and blame who took them out there. They didn't even blame Jim Clark a lot. They said, what must we do now to go back and win?
Comparing it to the 60s seems appropriate because, in a sense, we're back in a situation where people of conscience and people of faith in many cases have to appeal to a white-dominated government not to abuse the rights of minorities.
Yeah, you know, there's an article out that Neil Painter just did called The Meaning of Whiteness in the period of Donald Trump, where she says it's not just that you have white people who happen to be in office, but it looks like you're going to have people who are in office particularly to rule as white people, and they've played that up. We are in America. What we saw on Tuesday is as American as apple pie. This every so often somebody decides, let me see how far I can play the race-class divides. So we're in a very, very serious moral moment that we have to meet. And part of what we have to do in this moment, even as we fight, before we just run out and fight, is we have to gird ourselves up with the right history, with the right information, understand where we are, understand how much more we have at our disposal that our foreparents didn't have. And we cannot say this is the worst thing that ever happened. I mean, when you say that, you just are very, very uninformed historically. It is a bad thing that's happened, but it's not something overcomable, and
it's not something that can't be overcome.
That can't be overcome. Excuse me. I mean, I would be ashamed to look at what Harriet Tubman fought against, or to look at what William Lloyd Garrison fought against as an abolitionist, and then look at this election and just say, "Oh well, nothing I can do."
For the second time, I heard you say the phrase "born for this moment." Can you tell me where that comes from?
In the scriptures, Esther faced a plot against her people. She was content and confined within the king's house. She was doing pretty good, kind of a middle-class, upper-class girl that the king liked. And her uncle came to her and said, you've got to stand up. You're inside the palace. You're going to have to do some protesting. You're going to have to do some nonviolent disruption and disobedience. You're going to have to challenge the king. She said, I can't do that. He said, Esther, maybe you were born for such a time as this. And if you read the autobiographies of most people who got involved in fighting for freedom moments, there came a point where they decided that they were not just born, they were not just breathing, but they were born and breathing for the very moment we're in. And I believe if we're alive and if we're clothed in our right mind, we've got good sense about justice, we know what's right and what's wrong, we care about our deepest moral values. If we're alive and able, then this is the moment we're born for.